David got to go behind the scenes at the Bowl, and it was clear to him that the Chargers might still be a ways away from being a Super Bowl team. They absolutely have a championship level facility.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 9 seasons now, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there, as always, for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, the NFLPA has not been nice to the Chargers the last few years when it has come to the facilities. Well, I'm here to tell you that is going to come to an end. I got to visit the Bolt, and it was absolutely incredible. Every single advantage you could possibly want your football team to have is now at the players' disposal. But we're also going to get into some great questions in here today, like, do the Chargers have the worst offensive arsenal in the NFL? Nah, no chance. Greg Roman, some concerns there. We had some concerns when he first got hired with the Chargers, but I think there's some reasons for optimism as to why he will not repeat the mistakes of his past. And are the Chargers now better equipped to win those ugly games?
I absolutely think so, and I think Greg Roman's a big part of it. But today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. David, you got to go to the Bolt. Super cool of the Chargers to have an open house. And me and you were talking about what kind of the advantages were, right? Like, what do they have now? And it just seems like everything they have, they're state-of-the-art, totally incredible. And I think both of us thought to ourselves, like, this is what championship-level facilities look like. This is what kind of putting your money where your mouths are look like, because the teams can spend whatever they want on the facilities, right? The Chargers didn't have to do this kind of, insane building that they made for this compound, right? For this team. They could have spent whatever they wanted on it. They went above and beyond, it sounds like, David, and it's definitely clear that this is, if you care about winning and you want there to be no stone left unturned, this is the kind of facilities that you would have.
Yeah, the Chargers definitely left no stone unturned when it came to creating a state-of-the-art facility. 150,000 acres of just incredible player performance machines everywhere. It's incredible what the Chargers were able to provide to these players. Just starting from the outside, it's a sleek, beautiful building design. They have the Chargers Walk of Fame on the outside that really kind of enlightens the Chargers history and shows you all of the players and the people and the owners that had an impact on who the Chargers are today. And of course, there's also a statue of Alex and Faye Spanos out there, which I think is a nice touch with a little garden there. And then on the inside, there's just absolutely everything that you could possibly want. They have a 3-story Samsung screen that is what you see when you first entered the building, where they're playing clips of, different Chargers, videos, Justin Herbert, having some fantastic plays, throwing some touchdowns. And then it just goes to all of the equipment, all the amenities, hydrotherapy, saunas, recovery pools, conference rooms, massage and recovery rooms, 103 locker spaces. Not going to have any issues with space anymore. And also some of the comfort things inside the locker rooms I thought was really cool. A ping pong table, a golf simulator. Justin Herbert's going to love that. Even a barber area where they can get their haircuts done if they feel like it's necessary. Also have an esports gaming area. Ice baths, 3 full grass fields to practice and get the most out of them. And then, of course, the gym, just indoor, outdoor, and all of the incredible machines that you could ever want. So this is what it looks like to win inside the margins, to be able to go out there and provide every single thing that you possibly could to your players to get the maximum output. This is what it looks like. This facility is going to do that for the Chargers.
Yeah, and not to mention, the cafeteria, right?
Yeah.
Which is just like one of the places that was ripped to shreds the most by the NFLPA anonymous reports that came out, right? And now you have a Wolfgang Pup cafeteria that can fit more than their entire team in there at the same time. I just think that you want, obviously, the players to be their most comfortable, right? And you also want, as far as the football side of things goes, to not have anything standing in the way. And I think when you're talking about, how much does it help? How impactful is it that the Chargers have these state-of-the-art facilities now? It's so hard to quantify it, but I can tell you one thing, it doesn't hurt, right? Like we were talking before, like this is like a candy store for Ben Herbert. Like if you're going to go and get the most expensive strength and conditioning coach in all of college football and bring him to your team, but then have him working out of an office building, it's just hard for me to believe that he can fully let his mind wander and get the maximum out of what he wants to do to train these guys and get them up to peak physical shape, peak physical performance, to help them not get injured, to help them do all of the things that we haven't seen. And I think that we're at least hindered somewhat by a training room that didn't have enough tables for all the players to get training at the same time, right?
That's not a problem anymore.
Yeah, to not have saunas, right? To not have enough gym equipment for everybody to be doing everything at the same time. Like, for Ben Herbert to have this now at his disposal feels impactful. And I think when you're looking at the Chargers in the grand scheme of things now, like, how is this not a much more desirable destination than it was even just a year ago?
It 100% is. I mean, I can definitely see players that are free agents that would come and visit the Bolt and be absolutely wowed by all of the things that are at their disposal. I mean, they have a super, also, not only just the beautiful facility, but you now couple that with a super accomplished, established winner at head coach. That is such a huge bargaining chip to be able to say, like, hey, this guy's done it. Not only has he done it as a coach, he's done it as a player, and he's done it for over 14 years in the National Football League. He knows what it's like. He understands the shoes that you've been in, and he's had success at every single level, from college all the way to the pros, and you can feel confident that he's going to be able to put you in the best position to succeed. Now you have the facility and you have the head coach that can now take this football team where the owners and all the fans want them to go, which is a Lombardi trophy, a Super Bowl championship. The owner is giving everything that he possibly can to get the most out of these players, and now it's up to the players to go out there and get it done.
Yeah, and I think they deserve commendation for that. This is a frustration Chargers fans have had with this ownership group in the past. Go hire the expensive coach.
Yeah.
Go fill his staff with other expensive coaches. Even though there's no salary cap on it and you can spend whatever you want, go the extra mile. Even when the Chargers were in San Diego, they did not have a facility. They had a facility made for football. They did not have a facility that is even within shouting distance of what they have now. Like, this is a level of commitment from this ownership group that we've never seen. And I think if you're talking about, hey, you're selling a free agent on, the Hogue Center and Brandon Staley and comparing that to the Bolt and Jim Harbaugh, that's just two completely different pictures. And I think at the end of the day, money is what talks.
Oh, yeah.
Playing in California, taxes-wise, sucks. You're not always ever gonna be the most desirable destination.
It's expensive.
Yeah, we both know. We've lived here. I live here. At the same time, though, like, outside of that, you have everything you could possibly want to sell. The only thing that you don't have that you can't show right now is the winning. But I think now the big thing is just like, you have a championship-level coach. You have championship level facilities, championship level performance staff and coaching staff. No excuses anymore, right? Like, there's no more excuses. You have all the tools at your disposal. It doesn't mean it has to happen this year, but It means it has to happen now because you have everything you need in place to do it. Now you just have to build the team, right, that can actually go win the thing. But so awesome. So excited that you got to go. That thing looks just insane. I can't wait to see it during training camp, which starts next week. And I can't believe that we're saying that already. But we still have more great stuff to get into since we didn't have a show on Friday. We wanted to get into your guys' fan mail questions that you had. So a little mailbag Monday today, including why Bill Barnwell is saying the Chargers have the worst skill position players in the NFL offensively. I don't think so. And I think there's a couple guys that will absolutely outperform what the expectation is from the outside looking in, and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I need to tell you guys about Game Time, because Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier, and the prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. And I think something, especially for me as I've gotten older in life, experiences and things like that have become so much more important to me than physical things, birthdays and things like that. It's like, hey, get me tickets to something, right? And if you're going to get tickets to something, get them with Game Time, because being able to go on Game Time and see that there's a Padre game, for example, going on, and I know the best price for that and get really, really cheap tickets to go have an experience at a Padre game is awesome. But with Game Time, it goes so much further than that. You could do it with a comedy show. You could do it with theater. Whatever you're looking for, you can find the tickets on Game Time, and you get the Game Time guarantee, knowing that you automatically will get the best price if you find a ticket in the same row seat section as the tickets that you buy, and you go on Game Time and you find it cheaper somewhere else. They will match up to 110% of the difference, so you know that you're getting the best price. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. David, we do have some fan mail questions from last week that unfortunately we weren't able to do a show on Friday, but we wanted to reward the listeners and the everydayers that put in questions at Locked On LAC on Twitter, and we had some really good ones to go with, including this one that we have right here that I saw circulating, and I'm glad we get to talk about, from Brett L. Graham, who says, with ESPN writers putting current Bolts playmakers at the bottom of the league, which Chargers playmaker will do the most this year to prove them wrong? And let's first just start with the Chargers having the worst playmakers in the league. This is from a Bill Barnwell article where he has the Chargers ranked 32nd on the ranking of offensive skill players going into the 2024 season. And basically his point was this: if this offense is good, it's going to be in spite of the players that they have at their disposal, and more about having Justin Herbert at quarterback, which in the grand scheme of things, I kind of understand. But I still don't think, David, that just starting with them being the worst offensive arsenal in the league, I just wouldn't agree with that. I think there's definitely some players here that are getting underrated.
Honestly, I think because there's a lot of change with the Chargers, like there's a new offensive scheme, there's a new offensive coordinator, there's a lot of unknowns there, and there's a lot of people out there that just don't know what to think about what this Chargers offense is capable of being.
Sure.
And I think that's totally fair because, most of these people are from the outside looking in. But I think when you look at these position groups, I think you see some pretty well-rounded units. You look at the tight end group, you have guys that can catch the football, you have guys that can block. You have skill sets that complement each other, okay? In the running back room, I think obviously health is the biggest concern, but if the guys are healthy, the talent is there. I mean, Gus Edwards scored 13 touchdowns last year. J.K. Dobbins averaged almost 6 yards per carry when he was healthy and running on a regular basis. Kamani Vidal has all the talent in the world. Yes, he's coming from a small school, but he has a skill set that can translate to the NFL. If that's what your running back group looks like, I think you have a very, very good complement of players there that are much better than what they're projected to be right now. And then the wide receivers, you have a lot of youth, and you have a lot of diversity of skill sets there as well. You have guys that can go up and get it. You have guys that are great with the ball in their hands that can get those yards after catch. You have some guys that have some separation skills, with their route running and their speed and quickness. I think that when you look at these groups as a whole, there's a lot more talent there than what people really know how to evaluate at this stage with, a lot of the newness in the Chargers area of the offense.
Yeah, and the thing about this, too, that Bill Barnwell says is, hey, this is a focus on the top end part of this. And that is always going to skew poorly for the Chargers because at the top end, you don't have guys like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Austin Eckler. Yeah. You don't have big names like you have.
And Gerald Everett. Right, they're all
Gerald
gone.
Everett, too. And the thing about this also is just like last 2 years, the Chargers ranked 5th and 6th. They were top 6 both seasons.
And how many wins did they get out of that?
Exactly.
Not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, they got 0 playoff wins out of it, right? I mean, they had 1 trip to the playoffs in the last 2 years, but those names didn't help you at the end of the day, and the Chargers are obviously trying to do things differently. They're always going to score poorly on an article that's based like the one this is. Yeah. I just think that I think this is a group that's going to be looked at much differently because of what Justin Herbert's going to do for them. But I still think they have talent, and I just think that this is something that has a lot more to do with your top-end talent, and the Chargers were built for top-end talent. They were just incredibly shallow, and they didn't have any depth. They were made for lists like this in the past, and it didn't work. They're doing things differently this time. But if you're talking about players you think will prove this wrong, David, who would you go with?
Yeah, first name that's on my list is Hayden Hurst. I think Hayden Hurst is in a prime position to have a great bounce back year. You're pairing him with the best quarterback that he's ever had in his career, in the prime of his career, in an offense that is going to feature more targets for the tight ends. When you look at Hayden Hurst's best year, it was with Matt Ryan in 2020, where he had 88 targets, 56 receptions, 571 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I think that Justin Herbert and Hayden Hurst can pair up for a better season than that. I would not be surprised if you see Hayden Hurst in, the 700-yard area as far as receiving yards and somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 touchdowns. I think that is very feasible if Hayden Hurst is able to stay healthy. And then the second person that's on my list there for, a player that could definitely stick out on offense is going to be one of the running backs. It's going to be J.K. Dobbins. If J.K. Dobbins is healthy, my goodness, man, watch out. I think he still has the youth to be able to get over the injuries. They are very serious injuries. They are injuries that are more of the freak accident type nature there. I feel like if he's able to stay healthy, man, this guy still has some tremendous skill, and I think he's a guy that could easily break out in this offense if he is 100% going into the year.
Yeah, I agree. I think both those guys are underrated on this list, and neither of those guys gives you a top offensive arsenal by themselves, but I do think the collection of the Chargers gives them at least a much deeper offense than they've had in years past, even if they don't have the top-end talent. I think that Josh Palmer is somebody who's getting overlooked a ton going into the season. I think if he's healthy, he's in for a huge season too, and I do think the running backs will have a good year, right, and be really good if they can stay healthy, and that is the biggest thing, as he notes on there, that the injuries are the biggest part of it. But I also thought it was really surprising on this list, a little ESPN on ESPN crime, that he said that the Chargers, because of their lack of weapons, were hyping Ladd McConkey into basically a pivotal role out of desperation, and linked an article of Chris Rim asking if Ladd McConkey could be wide receiver 1. I think Ladd McConkey is absolutely an underrated skill position player that's part of this. I think he could be a very good offensive skill player. I think the Chargers are down the list. I just don't think that they're the worst, and I do think there are going to be several players where we're going to look back on this year, and we're going to say, okay, we have a totally different picture of that player in this group than we had going into the season. And to Bill Barnwell's point, a lot of that's going to be because I expect Justin Herbert to really elevate this group and turn this into a good offense because of how good he is, which I can't really argue at that point. It's not one of the top offensive arsenals in the league, but it absolutely could be a good offense with Justin Herbert at the helm. But let's get to this next question from Zachary Shelton, a.k.a. former superfan Zach, who says, is it really a big deal where we are ranked by different people for different position groups? This team seems to be doubted a lot. All that matters is what happens on the field. David, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like that they're definitely doubted, but I think it's because of one of the things I said earlier. It's just there's a lot of newness when it comes to the Chargers here. I mean, they have a completely 180-degree shift from the philosophy, from the head coach, from the ownership, from the organization. That's completely different. They have a new way of doing things. They have a new head coach. They have a new attitude, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, new general manager. There is a lot of newness here, and I don't think people know how to evaluate how these players are going to work in these specific offenses and defenses here with the Chargers. So I'm not paying too much attention where they are ranking specific players, because also a lot of that's based off of what they did last year. I don't think anybody has any real grasp on what the Chargers are going to look like this year, and I think that factors into the decisions they're making and the commentaries that they're providing in these articles that they're putting out.
Yeah, and I think this one is more targeted towards the articles that are ranking the top 10 players at the position. I saw Derwin James, top 10 as far as safeties go, and the Chargers aren't going to be good on those lists. They're definitely hoping that the collective is better than the individual parts. Yeah. Outside of obviously the big names that they have defensively, and then offensively, it's basically Justin Herbert and everyone else outside of Rashawn Slater, who's not playing a sexy position. But I think what you're seeing reflected is an unbiased opinion, right? At the end of the day, this is what the outside looking in thinks of the Chargers. And I do think there is some importance to it just from the fact that it's like there's no bias there, right? I mean, sure, everyone has their biases, but like people really think some of these guys aren't very good and that the Chargers just aren't going to be good this year. They're not buying into the Jim Harbaugh part of it, right? And if you're talking about just the players, the Chargers have a ton of prove it on this roster. The Chargers are asking from a lot of impact from rookie players on this roster. You're hoping for huge bounce backs, either from poor play or injuries from a lot of players. I think it just reflects the total kind of uncertainty, that the fact that really no one knows what to think about this team going into the season, and they're afraid of ending up with egg on their face, where we're not as afraid to be like, hey, I see where this is going. I'm not afraid to buy in on some of these things because I can kind of know where it was and kind of what the feeling is right now and what the actual problems were last year, even when you had the big names that weren't resulting in trips to the playoffs. Yeah. So it's just, it is interesting, and I always do look to see what the outside looking in feels like.
It's important to see what they say.
It's important to get outside of your rose-tinted glasses. It just is, right? Because this is a team we obviously root for.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I just think there's a lot of things that they're underrating, and I think best case scenario, it could look much better than people think it's going to. But there is a lot of variance too, and there could be some bad parts of it as well. But we do have more to get into, because we do have to get into what Kevin Oestreicher said last week and how concerned we are about what his description of why things went so poorly in Baltimore, and also why we think the Chargers have to win ugly this year with the new way that they're playing, and they're going to be tested very quickly in the season. Week 3, AFC North, the Steelers, that's going to be an ugly game, and we'll kind of see the Chargers get tested a little bit, and we're going to talk about that and much more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys that this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. One of the things that is so tough going through life is feeling like you aren't reaching the milestones that you should be at a certain time, especially when you're comparing yourself to others on social media. It's something that we all do. You see your friends that you went to high school with doing really well. But the problem is it might look like they have it all together on the outside, when really they probably don't, right? That's just the truth. And therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And all you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. David, we have more great stuff to get into because we had more fan mail questions on this now Mailbag Monday that I wanted to get to today, because we have a really good one here, a good voicemail at the voicemail line at 323-524-7924, talking about the concerns about Greg Roman's offense. And this is a guy that when he was hired, we had concerns about, but we also understand why they made the move. Before we get into that, though, I want to make sure everyone is checking out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel where you get wall-to-wall coverage 24/7, but you're getting the expertise of the local experts that cover their team every day. It's what separates Locked On, and you can find that by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and on the Amazon Fire free TV channels. David, let's get to this from Nameless here, who brings up, I think, a valid concern, and maybe I think something a lot of people were feeling last week when we had Kevin Oestreicher from Locked On Ravens on the show. Let's hear what they have.
Hey, guys. I have a burning desire to share something, and I would love to hear your guys' opinion on it. I listened to the interview with Kevin Oestreicher that you had, and my big takeaway was that the description that he gave for why Greg Roman didn't work out with Lamar was like nails on a chalkboard for us Charger fans. For me especially, because I am somewhat worried about this passing game. Phrases like, he put a cap on Lamar's ceiling, receivers running into each other, and no identity makes us feel like Joe Lombardi all over again. And this is not what I want for the offense. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. Thanks, guys.
David, I'm not super surprised that there are people hearing that from Kevin Oestreicher, who, was in it every day. He knows very well why things went wrong, right, with Greg Roman in Baltimore. Very different situation that he was in. But what do you think about his concerns there when you hear something like that?
I mean, hey, we had our reservations when Greg Roman was first hired as the Chargers offensive coordinator, because mostly because of the passing concepts, right? We had heard the same thing. Obviously, we weren't on the front lines with it every day like Kevin Oestreicher was. But I mean, it definitely, provides some perspective on what his body of work was when he was an offensive coordinator, at his most recent stop. But also, I think you have to hope that Greg Roman saw the criticism as well, and he was able to do some reflection and be able to see what his deficiencies were in his game. And he did take a year off. He did not coach in the National Football League last year. So hopefully he was able to take some time, be able to change and clean up those issues with spacing in his passing concepts while he was away, and also create some new ones with some new partners, meaning a couple of members of his offensive staff, like Mark Trestman and like Marcus Brady, the offensive passing game coordinator. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, having some constructive criticism, being able to recognize those deficiencies, and then having a new team to be able to help, brain trust those different issues and be able to come up with solutions and corrections in a new offense with a new quarterback in Justin Herbert that's going to be the conductor of that offense on the field for Greg Roman.
I totally understand the concerns because this is something that we had to go through and vent about when the hiring first happened. And I didn't love the Roman hiring, but I understand it. It's the most Jim Harbaugh thing ever.
It is.
And as far as putting a cap on Lamar's ceiling and receivers running into each other, first of all, receivers running into each other probably has a lot more to do with how well the players are grasping it, which you could have a concern about rather than the actual play calls and designs themselves. Guess what? There's not an offensive coordinator in the world, in the NFL especially, that's designing a play where two receivers are running into each other. Right? A lot of it's going to be like, hey, if it's a mesh route or something like that, it's like, okay, yeah, they need to know exactly where their depths are so they're not running into each other. But like that part I think is a little bit overblown. The biggest thing from the Kevin Oestreicher thing that I took away was just the level of trust that Greg Roman had with Lamar Jackson. I think that was the biggest thing. When I hear him not saying he can't have the autonomy at the line of scrimmage to make play changes and things like that, audibles and stuff like that, that tells me it's more about trust. And I think it was honestly a chicken and egg situation where it's like Greg Roman sitting there saying, hey, Lamar Jackson's great and an MVP because of what I'm doing, right? That's why he's great, where, he's saying, hey, if I change things, I don't know if it's going to look the same as that, right? Where Justin Herbert, there's no chicken and egg situation here. Justin Herbert was great well before Greg Roman got here, and you have to hope that he has more trust in Justin Herbert. And also, that was an offense that was run under John Harbaugh, a special teams coordinator, not a former NFL quarterback like Jim Harbaugh is. So
that's true.
I have less concerns about it, but I do love the fact that they have the checks and balances like a Marcus Brady, like a Mark Trestman, that you have hopefully the best of both worlds, and you're not running into a lot of the same things that he ran into and all of the places he was before where he eventually got fired. So there are parts of it that concern me, but there's other parts about it that get me really excited because you also get a guy that comes with an automatic top 10 running game and has had that at every single stop. And other good parts of it too. You just have to hope he can evolve and adapt, like you said, and that's what he said that he did in his year off last year.
Yeah.
We do have a voicemail from Athir, though, and if he calls in, we have to get to him. So let's hear what Athir has for us this week, talking about winning ugly.
Dan, David, this is your baby Athir. I love you, my boys. I am very confident in Coach Harbaugh to bring physicality to the Chargers this year and change the history of our. My question is, the first test is going to be week 3 at Pittsburgh. Can they pass the test and get an ugly road win like 17-14? What do you say? Thank you. Love you.
David, what do you think?
All right. So, well, two things. First, I think it's the first time in a very long time they're going to go into a football game against the Steelers and not have a distinct coaching disadvantage. Okay?
And toughness disadvantage, I would hope, too.
For sure. But that now Jim Harbaugh, Mike, Tomlin are on kind of similar wavelengths here now as far as coaching credibility and talent and, resume. I think that's number one. And number two is they're going up against a team and a franchise that is kind of already established as a physical brand of football. Can the Chargers match that physicality, and are they going to be able to, really end that, drought of being a weak football team? Can they do what they say they have wanted to do from day one? That's going to be the real test. Are they going to be able to run the football? Are they going to be able to play tough physical defense? That is going to be a real true test. I didn't say they can get it done. I think more and more I do feel like they have the ability to do so. I just need to see it. It is going to be one of the true tests to start the season for Jim Harbaugh.
And they're going to have to prove that to us, right? For you in that game, that's a game they have to prove that they are that team and they're not becoming that team. And it might not happen right away. It might not be week 1. But I do think what this is, though, is a great test of your toughness. This is where you show you can win an ugly game because that is the first really good defense you're going to go up against. The first 2 weeks, you get the Raiders and you get the Carolina Panthers. Those defenses don't scare me. The Steelers defense has legitimate top 10, top 5 even potential. That's a really, really good defense. That's one thing you always know you're going to get with them, and I always expect it to be a good game. But in those kind of games, that's why I'm so excited about the Greg Roman offense, because in games against great defenses in the past, Justin Herbert wasn't enough always. You had some very poor-looking offensive games because the one thing you don't want to do against a really, really good defense is be one-dimensional, where a team can say, hey, we can play dime coverage every down because we are not afraid of the Chargers running game at all, and they won't punish us for it even if we do it. And we saw it so many times. You think back over the last couple of years, like last year against the Patriots or the year before that against the 49ers. Where in second halves of games, you're absolutely dismantled because the other team knows there's only one thing that they have to stop. And Justin Herbert's still going to win games anyways, even when teams knew that. But now it's not so simple. Now you can't just sell out against Justin Herbert in the coverage if you have a running game. So I think that's such a good test to show us that they can win an ugly game if they need to, win a 20-17 type of a game against the Steelers. I think it's a great point of the year, and I think that is going to be the first great defense, a first toughness check. There's a lot of things we're going to find out, I think, in the week 3 game at Pittsburgh, right? Not Heinz Field anymore, but it should be. The ketchup bottle should still be there. But I think we're going to learn a lot. So, Theo, thank you for calling in, and thank you to everyone who hit us up last week. Sorry we weren't able to get it to you Friday, but wanted to make sure you guys were paid off for the great questions that you asked at Locked On LAC and the voicemails you called in at 323-524-7924. And you can hit up both of those lines tomorrow because it is Buy or Sell Tuesday, getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions with training camp right around the corner. So hit us up. Also, definitely want to just take a moment here to say rest in peace to Jacoby Jones. Something that I did not see coming. A Charger for a very short amount of time, but someone who passed away far too young, and someone who has some really iconic moments in NFL history with that, beating the Broncos, mile-high miracle with Joe Flacco on that Super Bowl run. Super awesome. I remember how excited I was because of the kind of impact he was as a special teams player, one of the best special teams players of his era. Rest in peace to Jacoby Jones, a former Charger who just passed away too soon, and it really, really sucked to see that, even as a guy, just to see that for a young player like that. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for Chargers Buy or Sell, and you also can find the show every day on all of our social media. So you can hit us up on Twitter at LockedOnLAC, like we talked about, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports, and David Droegemeier at Dro Talk SD as well. And David, I'm very excited. 5 shows a week, Monday through Friday. Locked On Chargers, your team every day. So we'll be back with you guys tomorrow. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.